With all the hype focused on Godzilla's 70th anniversary this year, it's easy to overlook some of the other Toho kaiju milestones. Both 1964's Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, two widely regarded films of the Showa era, celebrate their 60th anniversary. Stepping outside of the Showa era, the 1984 Heisei entry The Return of Godzilla, which would be released a year later in the States as Godzilla 1985, celebrates its 50th, along with 1994's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. One of my favorite villains of that era has its 40th. The Millennium-era Final Wars, a divisive movie amongst fans, hits its 30th mark, and the MonsterVerse celebrates its 10th with Godzilla 2014. But for me, aside from the original film, it is my birth year of 1974 that gave us Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, introducing to us one of the Big G's most popular foes. It's cooler than an irradiated prehistoric kaiju who spews radioactive breath. A mechanical doppelganger of said radioactive beast, who has finger, knee, and toe missiles, rainbow rays, zigzag beams, and a rotating head-activated body shield, and a sinister flesh suit that fires yellow breath weapon. Yes, people, I'm talking about 1974's Mechagodzilla. During the 70s, the Godzilla film franchise was struggling to bring in audiences, mostly due to the popularity of TV shows bringing in the same level of entertainment aimed at children. After the bizarre 1970 classic Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, Toho regrouped under producer Tomoyuki Tanaka's direction and started to focus the same child-targeted energy on the films. Both 72 and 73's entries, Godzilla vs. Gigan and Godzilla vs. Megalon, featured very tag team-themed monster bouts, featuring both title villains as abstract creatures. While Gigan maintained some popularity, Megalon was a sign that the ideas were at an all-time low, just like its box office returns. But in 1974, Toho made a rebound with a new classic villain, one almost different from what's come before. I say almost because a robot villain kaiju has appeared in Toho's The Mysterians and even in the more influential King Kong Escapes, where the eighth wonder of the world does battle with his robotic double, Mechanicong. We can only assume that Mechanicong had some influence over Godzilla's new foe. To give a brief overview, this movie is a must-see for those dipping their toes into the older Godzilla films, especially the 70s ones. Here, Godzilla is still kind of Muppety, like his Megalon version previously. Not sure if the suit was modified much, since the Bandai figures made distinct figures between the 73 and 74 suits mold-wise. Anyways, the story begins in Okinawa, when an archaeologist fresh from the site coverage witnessed the beginnings of a prophecy that was forewarned to them by the Okinawans. This leads to a serious mystery encounter involving Interpol agents and green alien apes. The latter, known as the spacemen from the third planet of the black hole, or simply the black hole aliens, have infiltrated Earth with plans to conquer it, and to do that, they must discredit and dispose of Earth's defender, Godzilla, with their own doppelganger. What they didn't count on was that a second monster would join into the fray, as King Seesar, who helps Godzilla mop up the mechanized twin while Interpol kicks the alien ape assholes. The film is among the better entries of the 70s series. You can tell a bolstered budget was applied, and the film pops with bright, vibrant colors, wild kaiju designs, and dazzling, for the time, special effects. It also features some of the bloodiest kaiju shots in the series. Anguirus and fake Godzilla's, aka Mechagodzilla, fight results in a bloody jaw snap, sending our spiky kaiju retreating. When Godzilla and fake Godzilla first meet, the two engage in a beam-off, which results in an explosion, sending Godzilla back into the sea, blood spouting up from the drink. And finally, the decisive battle has Godzilla spouting sprays of blood out of his jugular, and later coated in blood from missile impalement. Funny, considering that these films were considered kiddie fare at this point in the series. There are some odd and funny lines regarding Godzilla in this film, in a contradictory manner too.
A huge monster will arrive to try and destroy the world. The ancient prophecy is coming true.
I would never have guessed that the monster could be Godzilla.
Not gonna lie, that's fucking baffling. considering the years of giant monsters rampaging Tokyo, kicked off by Godzilla himself.
Something's wrong. Anguirus shouldn't attack his friend Godzilla.
Godzilla raids again, would like to have words with you. Anyways, Godzilla is still the hero status, evident by those two lines, and carries that from the previous entry. As with versus Hedorah and versus Megalon, Godzilla pulls off new abilities. Joining the atomic breath propulsion and the double kick tail slide, the Big G can now convert himself into a magnet, conveniently to use against a metallic foe. Their first encounter is spectacular, with an exploding oil refinery turning up the heat in a big way, and the first of what would become a referenced classic, the beam-off. Still, the antics are present, and Godzilla's appeal to children would be well curated. One of the coolest villains to come out of the Showa era, and up there with King Ghidorah, edging out Gigan as one of Godzilla's best foes. So enduring this robotic replica was that he was given a follow-up of 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla, and it was reimagined in the Heisei Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, and given another duology with the Millennium series Godzilla x Mechagodzilla and its follow-up Tokyo SOS. Let us not forget that Steven Spielberg utilized his version for Ready Player One, and even Legendary's MonsterVerse dropped their version into Godzilla vs. Kong quite effectively. But fans of modern Godzilla movies may ridicule the OG in favor of the Kiryu or the Adam Wingard, and stepping outside of my own bias, I can see why. The design is dated, with his rivet-lined panels, accordion elbows and knees, and silly trapdoor zigzag ray make for a cheesy reminder of the 70s aesthetic of films with which it is associated. However, I will counter that notion. With all the versions on film since the original, none have a more sinister vibe than the OG. He just looks evil. The Heisei always had a Humpty Dumptiness to his design. Kiryu is like the pet Godzilla as the pilots bonded with the machine, giving it that name. Ready Player One's version comes close to the original's evil visage, and Godzilla vs. Kong's rendition remains the OP nature of its offensive capabilities, but looks like a bunch of shipping containers strung together into a Godzilla shape. An interesting side note, and spoiler, all evil incarnations of Mechagodzilla get their heads ripped off towards the end of their fight with Godzilla across his filmography. There's something about the original's aesthetic, the sharp and dangerous lines, a rigid copycat whose finger and toenails are born of the Shogun Warrior's missile launchers. His turn signal eyes add to what was a cool futuristic look back then. That malicious teeth-bearing visage adds to the mean vibe that Mechagodzilla exudes. By extension, the villain category must fall upon Mechagodzilla's creators, the black hole space aliens from the third planet. These guys come decked out in their shiny silver space uniforms, disguised as regular Japanese men, but injure them, and they lose their grip on disguise and reveal their sinister simian forms. It's unclear if their camouflage is biological feat, or one dependent on their advanced technology, but I would assume since it's injuries that usually exposes them, that it's the former. Speaking of technology, these galactic gorillas utilize space titanium to craft their mechanical monster and load it to the gills with weaponry. They lurk in an underground high-tech lair, not unlike a James Bond villain, and are led by Kuranuma. Kuranuma is both unintentionally hilarious and heinous. In the English dub, he has a silky hissing voice, and likes to utter "Damn Godzilla" here and there. Despite his contempt for Earthlings, he enjoys himself a glass of brandy and a good cigar. His method of getting poor Professor Miyajima to submit to his terms is to send his daughter into a scalding cell along with him. In the end, Kuranuma gets his with a gunshot to his Adam's apple, spewing dark green blood. His gorilla form is revealed, but distinguished by little bits of gold. This is one of my son's favorite kaiju, and I would say that he works well for the age group. Silly and cool at the same time. It is the best way to describe this guy. Love that he is a living embodiment of the Shisa lion statues found in local temples. As a kid, he looked like a giant bronze-faced shaggy dog with expressive ears and an obvious tail-light eyes. He starts off the fight with the titular villain well, ramming himself against the space titanium machine and reflecting on the I-beam attacks with his own. But eventually Mecha-G figures out he can't reflect missiles, and that's where the short-lived advantage goes down the toilet. Like Jet Jaguar, another ally from the 70s, both were regarded to bring something of the times into the films, as TV show heroes were grabbing the core audience's attention away from the series. Both guys were considered one-offs compared to the likes of Ghidorah, Gigan, and Mechagodzilla himself, but both have made recent returns in Godzilla media, with King Seesar most notably returning for Godzilla Final Wars, and both have the distinction of having their own theme songs. Now, I'm going to state something right off the bat. I like the dubbed versions of Godzilla films just as much as I appreciate the original language tracks. Many purists may poo-poo the English dubs of these movies, but to me it was part of the charm watching these on television as a kid. But sometimes there are some lines that are executed in such hilarious fashion. Here are some examples. I would imagine, as a young actor, which playing an old man would be a thin line between believability and a caricature. This is especially true with voice actors who often have the need to embellish their performance. That could be, well, cartoony. We get that here, with a babbling and beleaguered performance which doesn't seem as bad in the original language.
Okay? Nami! Nami!
Oh, grandfather!
Nami!
What's the matter, grandfather?
You will be the instrument of our revenge! Oh, Godzilla!
Keisuke is the lead, and he's, well, not a very good protagonist.
This is the entrance to the cave. I won't go inside with you.
Oh, sorry for assuming, asshole. Whereas most leads in Godzilla films are frantically trying to find a solution to Japan's plight, Keisuke plays his moves close to the chest, often keeping poor Saeko in the dark. In fact, he's an ass to her at times, especially with his attitude and jokes.
You've been making a fool of me. The stone statue was a fake.
What friends don't know, enemies won't know.
Hold it.
Ah, Keisuke, welcome home. Hello. I brought a guest for you. Wow.
Oh, you're mean. You should have told me that Professor Wagura was your uncle.
Sorry. I couldn't resist making fun of you.
The ladies must love your charm, buddy. The character of Nanbara is set up to be this mysterious bystander who reeks of sus, a walking anime trope. He's decked out with a black trench coat with a massive collar pulled up, dark aviators, and a mysterious ring that plays out somehow in the plot. Not sure if it's a clue he's with Interpol, as I never heard of them wearing secret rings, but who knows, maybe it is a secret. He shows up at convenient times to drop his little remarks, leaving the main characters Saeko and Masahiko especially flummoxed.
If I can get a scoop, I'll make a lot of money. So, I hope you'll help me.
So, the English dub makes his comments even more creepy because he manages to laugh at his own ominous words through the film.
On a beautiful night like this, you should talk about love.
Seriously, is the humor going over my head? Both of our main characters even appear astonished.
And then you got caught in the net. I've been following you ever since. And that's all there is to the story.
Fucking hilarious, buddy. This movie is a fun watch. Again, easily one of the best of the latter half of the Showa era, only being beaten by its sequel that following year. The ramp up in budget helps make this way more engaging than the previous year's Godzilla vs. Megalon, which felt like it had a very bare bones budget. The score by Masaru Sato is light, jazzy, and thrilling, with a bit of a sweeping adventure feel, a stark contrast from Akira Ifikube's heavy, pondering sounds. In fact, the sequel, Terror of Mechagodzilla, is in a lot of ways in heavy contrast of many things I just mentioned. The monster action is kinetic, with eye-popping visual effects, saturated scenery, and wonderful pyrotechnics. Using the trusty Jet Jaguar punch rating, this film scores a 4 punches. Yes, this film is an entertaining romp, with no heavy themes, tons of fantasy sci-fi elements, and in the end, this delivered an iconic villain who has returned in almost every era since, a top-tier baddie second to King Ghidorah. While latter adaptations spin this monster robot as man's weapon to fight Godzilla, the original Space Godzilla here is my favorite. I hope you enjoyed this retrospect, as I plan to do more for the 70th anniversary. Also, I would appreciate a like, share, and a comment down below. And if you're feeling randy, do subscribe for more of my Godzilla content. I enjoy making these quite a bit, so I hope you do. Thanks for watching.